When we stop protecting our boys, we stop protecting their futures. Now, as I've been going through this work for over 40 years, our sons become statistics, not stories. But I know for a fact we can change that. And if we're protecting their hearts, their minds, and hope, there we can make a difference. The reality is, boys have fallen behind in several areas, and we understand that more than anything. As we see in the reading gaps by fourth grade, I like to say things happen early with boys that we ignore. 65% of black boys, reading problems. 60% of Latino boys, reading problems. This is just in the Department of Education's evaluation. I'm sure there are many other areas that we can find it. Boys make up 2 out of 3 special education placements. I like to think that that's not always a diagnose. I think because of the way we structured the system, it forces parents to use that mechanism. And girls make up 60% of college degrees. Not saying that we all have to go to college, because there are some very powerful trades out there that our boys can benefit from and provide for their families. But there are some things that we will discuss that is important that our boys are valued. Mental health. Think about that. So, the second leading cause for boys ages 10 to 19 is suicide. You've heard me screaming smash suicide for boys 5 to 11 being number 1. And that's really the beginning, because that's how we have seen things that we're able to. And again, you're going to get this little jewel at the end. And it's not really a jewel, it's right there in your hands already. And 80% of homicide victims under the age of 25 are males. Here in Detroit, we understand that a number of boys' bodies and children's bodies have been left in morgues, never to be picked up. So when a boy fails, it's not just his grades, it's their future, their peace, it's their purpose that's under fire. And that has to stop, because when a boy is not properly invested in, things happen. Now, if you've been following me, and hopefully you check the subscribe button here at METV. If you've been following, you know I've done a lot of work around fathers, done a lot of work around boys. But here's the root cause, right? And it stands out that 1 in 4 boys actually live with their father in the home. And that's children across the board, right? That's 1 in 4 live without their father in the home, right? They're constantly exposed to violence. I know when my mother and father divorced, right away, everything just shifted. We went from order to disorder, right? And it's tough, right? Because for a boy, he doesn't have the in-house example. And so eventually he doesn't have that male to mimic. And that is an issue. And it's a big time issue. The other thing is that emotional intelligence is off. The psychological processing somehow gets damaged. There's many tests out there I actually am wanting to do a study around this very thing, right? Uh, Literacy for the boy is gone. And dads shape a lot of these things, right? And he's not exposed to his own species. And that is tough. So, as I was saying the other day, our boys are taught to fight, not to really feel, to hustle, but not to really heal. And this is why mentorship and why I've mentored for over 40 years, because it was something missing and I recognized it right away. And mentorship and literacy, those two things really help shape the man, because the more words that the boy can take in means he can have a smooth conversation as an adult with the woman or other adults. We're not getting enough words into our boys. We'll give them a hammer, we'll give them a nail, right? We'll give them, physical interaction. But words, that's a place we have to focus in improving our boys, men, husbands, and fathers, so we can communicate better and emotionally regulate. Because words. One of the things that we really missed is the cost of absent males. We've heard all the stories around, black teachers. We've heard the story around male teachers. We've heard the story around crime and things like that, but we didn't take in the information around the generation being lost. And this is a huge problem, right? Every boy who drops out or disengages adds to the economic, social, and criminal costs, meaning that the system is eating off that boy. It's guaranteed that if he's not in high literacy, high understanding, high fathering, that he's going to fall into that system, the economic system that is built several prisons. And as you can see right now, why it has so many people attempting to arrest, because they're paying top dollar for your sons to not be viable. This is an area that hate thrives, and I really want to make this clear. When a father is absent, poverty risk doubles, teen pregnancy triples, youth incarceration skyrocketed. I literally worked in the juvenile system, and I can tell you that dropping your son off at the juvenile system is not a solution, right? And not being an involved parent, communicating, is not going to be an answer to your problems. And if we don't protect our boys now, we'll pay for it later in prisons, poverty, and pain. But there's hope, and I want to share that hope with you. Over the years, even just in the last 18 in our mentoring program, we've had, since probably like 2012, we've had a 98% parental involvement in our mentoring program, right? We found that we could get the boys, but what was separating them from the crime and the system? Well, we implemented words, leadership, character. These are things that we really enforced. We set our rules. And our number one rule in our mentoring program was really that you could not make fun of your mate, your teammate, your peer, your social mate, right? But the number one rule we had was you couldn't use the N-word. Immediately, their vocabulary changed. We recognized just by taking the N-word out of play as our number one rule, it literally stemmed the tide And till this day, we still have not had one fight in our mentoring program. The number 2 rule was there was no stealing, right? Everything else was negotiable, but those first 2 were not, right? And so what we did in our programming in the 5-6 contact hours is we upped the words, we upped the storytelling, we upped the communication. And because we use fathers, right, we use fathers as the mentors. That was our secret sauce. And we continue to pour in, right? Here's the thing that you should know. When a boy is mentored early, he's 3 times more likely to graduate and 70% less likely to commit a crime. We've been getting the boys at 8 to 14. We've had a lot of success. We understand that not just the system, finding people who's looking for a healthy mentoring program across this country. We did 10-state research in a lot of impoverished areas. We know that our formula works. That's an important piece. We've implemented programs like our Reading is Life programs for boys 3 to 7, our Smash Suicide campaign, where we recognize young guys and making sure that they are fully, here's the word, fully encouraged, right? The Emmy way is a powerful way. And we are very close to launching that campaign to bring this to you because we are not having these problems when we are involved with our young men. And I get it that we don't understand because here in Michigan, a black boy is 44 times likely to be kicked out of daycare. Boys on average 4 times. So that's 40 more times for a black boy. But for these boys, all these boys, just had a young man come in. I'll be working with him. He's an Asian young man. And he recognized how he was feeling based upon treatment as a young boy, right? And so this is an area that we find that is so important. So I'm going to give you a couple of other points here that will go into this topic, right? Our challenge is the call to action and who's going to show up. And we understand, I think we understand that we have a crisis. I think I said that. And so I'm going to talk to the dads here, right here. And the parents, really, the mothers and the fathers, because there's this 2 thing that's happening. We have become very comfortable with blaming one another, right? The father blames the mother blames the father. I want control of the kid, but understand that dynamic is destructive to the child. If you have 2 healthy parents and they're fighting for the love of the child, it's going to be very destructive to the kid. It's going to be very destructive. Fathers, you have to show up. And you have to stay consistent. The one thing that we see over and over again is when a father is involved with his child, we don't hear much about that cognitive dissonance for a boy. The boy usually is soaring right next to the girl. And somehow we got to get our system to understand that. Mothers, you have to speak life daily. Stop punching your boys and calling your boys names in grocery stores and being disrespectful to the boy. The boy is different. Your son, when he speaks up, he has to have his protection is being shaped as early as 2 and 3 years old. So he might say, "Mom, no." This is why you see boys in heroic positions, saving people, because that protection is being shaped as young as 2, especially when they begin to walk. You have to pay attention. So you have to speak life daily into a boy. You cannot break a boy down. I'm begging you, stop connecting and calling your sons that they're like their fathers when the father is not present and you've been demeaning the father. It's not going to help him. You're slowly destroying your sons. So we have to stop that. And it's the same for your daughters, and it's the same, Dad, for your daughters. We have to stop speaking ill will toward the other parent. It doesn't work. And it only forces a child to make a decision. And when a child makes that decision, it's a good chance that the child will choose the parent that he spends the most time with, he or she spends the most time with. But at a certain point, when they discover that the other parent was there all along or was being truthful, you're going to have a bigger problem. And that is what's really affecting our relationships going forward into our adulthood, is because we discover certain things about our parents that we then embody, and it causes problems. Coaches, educators, I need you all, from the mother, the father, the parents, I need you all to put encouragement in play with these children, in particular your sons and your boys, your athletes. You got to put encouragement into play. It's just so important. It's vital, right? You have to put the encouragement into play. It's essential. There are so many studies, and eventually we'll get to that. And that is important for you to understand. And so eventually you get, I'm going to suggest you put your kids in the Emmy brand. I've seen kids in Scarface. I've seen kids in skeleton print. I've seen so much negativity that these kids are wearing on their body. It blows my mind. But if you go over to Emmy Apparel, right, you can get an Emmy t-shirt, and it's going to shift the whole environment. Emmy stands for Encourage Me. I just want you to know that the future doesn't change by accident, and this is real. And I got a small story about why this works. I had a young man in my mentoring program, and the young man was defiant. First 14 weeks, didn't want to do nothing. Second 14 weeks, just uncooperative. Third 14 weeks, his third time, still, right? And we take a trip. And at the trip, I see him being disrespectful to his mom. And so at that point, he can no longer come back to the program. Or get a phone call, and right, we bring him, the session is getting ready to start, and he walks in the door. And he came over and apologized. And his kid went on to be a hard worker. In fact, would become a certified leader in our program. So my point to you is that it doesn't always happen when you expect it to happen. Sometimes it takes a space and a break for that little bit of encouragement to be missed. And what happens is it'll ignite something in that kid, and that kid will become a hard worker. So remember, put that encouragement in play, in particular for our boys, and watch what we say and do in front of our boys, because our boys have to become the future leaders of tomorrow. And so if we don't teach them properly, we're more than likely are going to cause harm to society. Remember, boys matter because they become men, husbands, and fathers. Peace. And don't forget to subscribe and like and share this video. Thank you.